I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war, and I've been shutting down the stars. Yeah, cause when it rains and it pours, yeah, and I'm ready for some more. Yeah, and I've been reading all the
And welcome back to Freight Alley and Global Supply Chain Week. Right now we are live doing Put That Coffee Down. It's the podcast that we do each week on freight sales, and it's the Freight Sales Podcast for closers. And you can see right here, back behind us, this is our normal backdrop here, money running down, Anthony Smith.
That's right. And Kevin Hill, I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm excited to be a part of this segment. Your Put That Coffee Down. A lot of gems being dropped, a lot of money being made, and if you're listening to the show, it can do nothing but help you in every asset of how you operate or how you want to grow your business.
You're exactly right. We talk about sales. We talk about the green.
Yeah.
The green,
Yeah.
you know? So we talk about sales. We talk about leads. We talk about the entire sales process. We have great guests on. Dooner and I did this show for about a year, and now he's doing some extra What the Truck. So I always have special guest co-hosts along with our guests. And today is your turn in the co-host seat, Anthony Smith.
I've been waiting for this moment. And on top of that, as an economist, I think we have a special guest that we're going to introduce a little bit later on and get to even more deep in the econ web.
We will. So you can put on your economist hat and talk numbers and rates and everything that economists do.
Yes.
Together. But yeah, so Teclo Garcia, he's an economic development director for the City of Laredo. Will be in. He sells the City of Laredo to industries, to logistics, and Laredo has a very special part of the auto supply chain, right? Because you have a lot of component parts being manufactured and value add going back and forth across the border. There was an article not too long ago, or I guess maybe it was 6 or 7 years ago, now that I think about it. But, that the average component or auto part might cross the border between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico back and forth maybe a dozen times before it was actually completed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it has to go through Laredo a lot of the time, right?
It does. This is the largest inland port in the United States. And I think it's the fourth port by value. And I have some stats here with this. I lived down in Laredo for about 6 months as a freight broker. Love the city, great people, awesome food. Just a really neat experience to be able to go down there and be right on the border and doing international trade as a freight broker. But it's the number one inland port along the U.S.-Mexican border. That's the Port of Laredo. Number 4 in the nation with $205 billion in imports and exports in 2020, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data analyzed by World City. Approximately 4.5 million trucks crossed the border in 2020, north and southbound, right? It's home to 220 freight forwarders, 650 trucking companies, and 120 U.S. Customs broker. And it seems like they're all along Mines Road.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to Mines Road, it is just, it's wall-to-wall trucks. But goods shipped through Laredo travel to more than 60 countries. The top products imported: vehicles, machinery and electronics, and exported is machinery, electronics, and vehicles, and plastics as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of fits the theme of what we're talking about throughout this entire segment of global supply chain, especially for today. And it's just like when you think of Texas, you hear all these things. You hear of Dallas, you hear of in Dallas-Fort Worth, you hear of Austin. Laredo kind of goes under the radar.
It does.
But there's a lot going on there. It kind of reminds me of Chattanooga a little bit. Like Chattanooga goes under the radar in comparison to Knoxville, Nashville. Atlanta's right down the road, but there's a lot of activity. Freight Alley. When you look at Laredo, I think it's another one of those areas that's like a lot of activity, a lot's going on there, but it flies under the radar in comparison to some of the other major cities.
It does. The big markets: Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, L.A. But Laredo is the lifeblood between the U.S. manufacturers, Canadian manufacturers, and the manufacturers in Mexico's. Mexico's corridor there with Monterrey, and then you have the auto industry is a little bit more south into parts that I'll butcher their names. Querétaro, my Spanish pronunciation is just slightly worse than my English pronunciation of words. So Yeah, you have that, but you have the maquiladoras.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about the maquiladoras. I used to know exactly what it meant, but now we're going to get Teclo in here in just a few seconds to explain it a little bit more to us as we do this interview. But it's interesting to see, he's a salesperson. He's selling the city of Laredo, and we have Teclo on right now. Thanks for joining us, Teclo. How are you doing?
Kevin, Anthony, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and certainly an honor to be on with y'all to talk about supply chain and Laredo. Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. Thank you very much for joining us today, Teclo. Can you give us a little bit about your background and your work for the city of Laredo? And I think you've done similar work in different municipalities and cities along the border in South Texas.
Yeah, a little bit about my background. I'm a veteran, U.S. Air Force veteran who became a journalist and an editor-in-chief here in Texas, and then kind of got into government affairs and then economic development. Everyone says no one gets straight into economic development. There's no degrees for that. Somehow you wind up in it, and that's how I got into it. And I've been in Laredo now for about a year and a half, going on 2 years, and I lived in McAllen, another strong border port, for 13 years before that, and so that's a little bit of a background on me.
That sounds very interesting. Now, here's the $1 million question. I lived in Laredo for 6 months. I'm very interested to know this. What's your favorite restaurant in Laredo?
Yeah, for sure, it's Palenque Grill.
Yeah.
That's my go-to. My favorite plate. Just to go a little bit further, Kevin, is the pechuga de pollo or enchilada plate. Either one, man. I'll take it any day.
Great minds think alike, Teclo, because that was on my list here, the Palenque Grill. I love going in there. The Camarones agua chile. Is that how the agua chile shrimp?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If you never had that, for the audience, if you never had that dish, it is superb.
Really?
It is. It's basically shrimp that is cooked kind of like ceviche style. Am I getting this right, Teclo?
Right.
A little bit
Yes,
of ceviche
correct.
style with a lot of pepper, jalapenos, and I mean it is just delicious.
I mean, that's some of the things I love. Like when you're thinking about certain regional areas and some of the areas that kind of specialize in certain dishes and things like that. Like in New Mexico, it was all about chili.
Yeah.
Green chili or red chili. And so just kind of hearing about some of these areas and the regional variancies and what those popular dishes are. So I got to get out to Laredo.
Yeah, definitely. New Mexico. You were at New Mexico State, Las Cruces there.
That's right.
So
that's right.
You had that
Right
great
across the
flavor.
border.
My lunch spot was El Popo's. The tortas were great. Have you ever been there, Teclo?
I haven't been here since I've been here, but a lot of people talk about that. There's too many restaurants. Anthony, if you come, don't start a diet before you get here.
Noted.
He doesn't know what the word diet is. He has 2 lunches and 2 dinners. I think Dooner said you live on protein and Sour Patch Kids.
I mean, as long as you skip breakfast, you're A-okay. You're good to go.
So Teclo, tell us, what's the most enjoyable part of your job?
Well, really the most important, most enjoyable for me is connecting private sector opportunities, with what they need to get to be successful here in Laredo. If someone's looking for property or a partner or maybe some other strategic initiative with the city or another public entity, to see those come together, Kevin, and then if it's something more traditional, a company who just wants to locate to Laredo, when I see them start construction and then or expansion, if it's a local company that we might help in the private sector, and you start seeing those jobs postings go up, I mean that's what it's all about. It's about the investment, creating opportunity for that particular enterprise, and then also seeing our local residents being able to take advantage of that in the way of jobs.
So, Teclo, you really have to kind of wear 2 hats when you're doing this, right? You have to be very public authority at state and local government, but you also have to think in terms of what's going to be good for, private businesses. What are some of the, difficulties when you're kind of switching between those 2 gears?
Well, certainly, privacy is of utmost importance to the private sector, and when you're dealing with economic incentive programs and trying to accommodate that private sector company along with what is needed for transparency on the government side, those always seem to come across each other and meet at a certain place. But I think we've got that down. The state of Texas has an excellent code to go by, and we try to use that as best as possible and work with our private sector companies. And as in dealing with some of the companies y'all were mentioning even before the show started, some companies are wide open and they really don't mind a full 100% transparency, and others are very private. And so we've got to respect that and deal with that. But that's one of the challenges that we deal with, and I think a lot of economic development folks across the country deal with probably on a daily basis.
You're exactly right. That public and private type of question that Anthony brings up. Let's talk about the unique position of Laredo, and in the automotive sector, which is huge for cross-border trade between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada as well. We can't forget about our Canadian friends up north. So there's a concept, or there's a trade concept called there's companies that fall into what you call maquiladoras, right? If I have that pronunciation right still. Can you explain to the audience a little bit what maquiladoras are, and that industry, or the industrials that make up the maquiladoras?
Yeah, my Spanish is not perfect, Kevin, but I'll help you a little bit. It's called maquiladoras. And but no, you mentioned, you started to explain it earlier as you were talking. It's the maquiladora is essentially a twin plant concept, right? And so when there could be a manufacturer on the Mexico side of the border, and maybe a finisher on the U.S. side, or vice versa, right? There could be a manufacturer on the U.S. side with the value add on the Mexico side, depending on what the product is. And in the auto area, obviously those go back and forth, and for a ton of reasons. I mean, you could start with some bare bones, resources that need to be put together in one place. Add another component in Mexico, maybe a third one in Canada, brought back to Laredo for finishing or packaging. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen, and if you can think of new cars that way that get shipped from central Mexico, as you were mentioning earlier, there's a lot that has to take place. That concept has worked very well for several decades, and we continue to receive interest on that. We just helped a company about 4 weeks ago, Kevin, trying to locate in Nuevo Laredo for manufacturing as part of the maquiladora process.
Yeah.
So one of the areas that I'm curious about, I mean, like I said, you're looking to draw business in for Laredo. Do you see yourself competing against, other cities or, local areas within Texas or other states for some of that business?
Yes, and no, Anthony. We do compete, like most other cities do, to draw whatever company that you're trying to pull into your area, and certainly in Mexico as well. They're looking for a border crossings that is transparent and fluid, and can move their goods to meet their deadlines for their clients. And in that sense, we do compete sometimes with other border crossings, whether it be El Paso or FAR or Brownsville, or even Nogales, or Otay Mesa in California, just depending on the locations and strategies of that company. There's been a lot of relocations to Texas. Many have gotten a lot of ink, from the tech sector, and so Texas has been very aggressive in recruiting and expanding locally, and sometimes we will get into that. But I think most important is to find out, before we even compete with another city or location, is find out what that company needs to do that's best for them. If they want to be in the center of the country and they're looking at DFW, well, Laredo's probably not going to be in their realm, because we're a little bit too far south for maybe for their goals to be accomplished. But if they're looking for a manufacturing or quick in and outs of Mexico and other logistical goals, yeah, we can help them.
And Kevin, I think that kind of gets back to what the core of a lot of sales is, or successful sales, or good sales. I mean, you have a product, you have a good, you have
Mhm.
a service that you're looking to sell that draws utilization, but only if you can actually derive that utilization. You don't want to just push a
Yeah.
product just to push it, and this isn't actually going to be a solution for you.
Yeah. So the companies that are Laredo is a solution for, you're selling that solution. Laredo has it also has a very distinct competitive advantage over a lot of the other border crossings as well, right, Teclo? Because you have the largest port, you have the direct road
Mhm.
to Monterrey, which is I think the third largest city in Mexico, and maybe the wealthiest per capita as well, because you have and if you've ever driven through Apodaca into Monterey and around the outskirts, every major brand you see signage of because they have state of the art facilities about or what is it, 2 hours from Laredo, from the border crossing, the
Yes,
international
sir.
bridge.
About 2 hours away from our bridges is Monterrey, and their industrial might, and we're on I-35, which a
Hmm.
lot of folks forget doesn't end in San Antonio. It goes from Minneapolis and all the way through DFW and Austin, and then San Antonio, and then Laredo. But yeah, no, you were mentioning some of the things that helped Laredo be the port early, the number 4 port and number 1 exporting port. There's a lot of things that have to take place for us to do that, and including having a great leadership team
Hmm.
here, at the city, but also, our federal partners, those, U.S. Customs folks that work the bridges 24/7. That's extremely important that make us successful. We do have several bridges, and we have 4 bridges, vehicle bridges, and 1 rail bridge, Kevin, and
Hmm.
another rail bridge on the way, and then another vehicle bridge, in planning. So, having multiple bridges like that, as opposed to just having one that could be closed for whatever reasons, makes Laredo successful. And the last point I'd like to make along that question is, as you mentioned, the highways between Monterrey and the border. Laredo has lived off its strategic location for hundreds of years, since its founding. But opening up that market on the southwest side of Laredo, that grows avocados and berries and a lot of other
Hmm.
commodities, with that new highway, the Pacific Highway, and connecting that to Monterrey has really, really driven demand for Laredo.
And thinking about some of the things that have been recent with Laredo, I'm curious, how has Laredo been, or your role especially, been affected by COVID-19 over the last few quarters?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Actually, yesterday, I ran into a colleague who was not wearing a tie, like both of you gentlemen. I wish I could not wear one some days, but 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 I asked him, I go, "Where's your tie?" He goes, "No, that's your job. You wear a tie. You're selling Laredo, not me." And so it's difficult to do. I think a lot of economic development professionals have the same challenge of trying to sell your community, from your desk, from your apartment or your home, right? I mean, that's a
Hmm.
challenge, but I think we're finding ways to do it as best we can. And we still had near a record year in terms of construction last year in Laredo, and then the last 5 months at our bridges, traffic has been up even 13% in December. So we're finding a way somehow, Anthony.
Yeah, it's you are definitely. I mean, traffic's up. So basically, I worked on along Mines Road near
Mhm.
the International Bridge. Whenever there's been 6 7 years ago now. It was a busy hopping place at the time. You mentioned expansion.
Mhm.
How's expansion going along Mines Road, and what other areas might be opening up right now for further expansion and the growth of Laredo?
Well, Mines Road is, it's a blessing and a detriment at the same time, because it's closest to the World Trade Bridge and it carries more traffic than I-35, Kevin. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how busy it is, and so it's definitely the main artery that goes along several industrial parks there, and it's used heavily. And we're working to expand it and increase connectivity to 35 instead of having just one way to get to 35. So we're doing that. There has been, especially along the north part of Mines Road, probably scrub brush when you were here, but there's a couple of business parks on that north side of
Hmm.
Laredo that have drawn the a huge interest from our produce companies, where Mission Produce is putting a $50 million facility in, and then another group is putting another $20 million group in, which we'll announce here in a couple of weeks. And then on I-35, that continues to grow as well. FedEx just opened up a $25 million gateway to Mexico facility, and then our friends at Majestic, we're continuing to work with. We're trying to get their 2,000-acre, $1 billion development off the ground in a partnership with the city.
And then that north part is along the loop, right? The north part of the loop around Laredo?
North of the loop, about 3 miles. We like to call it the Unitech area, or the Mile 13. It's on its way to San Antonio.
Okay.
Excellent. And I mean, that's some of the things about Laredo is like you just mentioned some of the produce stuff, avocados, and we also know the automotive sector. So it's just like so much. It's not one just particular industry with Laredo.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of everything.
It is definitely, and let's talk about the deep freeze that you guys just went through. Houston got snow. I don't think you guys got snow down there, but you had power out. We were supposed to talk early last week, and you guys were without power, and I'm sure scurrying around because it doesn't get that cold down there too often. And we're talking about produce, right? And how's that freeze going to affect the crop?
Certainly, south of us is the Rio Grande Valley, and the Rio Grande Valley was unfortunately impacted, by the freeze. Cabbage and citrus, especially, which is their strong suit, right? That was impacted. Mexico was and their crops were not impacted. But what happened, Kevin? The biggest issue with the freeze was, our bridges stayed open the entire time, and we had product still moving north from the border, but anything north of Laredo through San Antonio, 35 was closed down, and so there wasn't a lot of movement, and the supply chain was halted, and there's a lot of stores that had to close, including the biggest grocer here, HEB, did not close, but their shelves were bare, and so they're catching up now, just like everybody else, but certainly had an impact statewide for sure.
Definitely. And Teclo, I'm curious. I mean, I always want to know with anyone that we have a chat with on what's next, whether it be their company or their business or anything like that. I'm curious of one of the things that you're most excited about with the city of Laredo over the next 12 months.
Well, we've got some open deals that we're and private sector companies that we're dealing with. I wish I could reveal more about that, but these are on the verge of happening. And they could really mean, hundreds of millions of dollars of new investment for Laredo, and we're really counting on closing some of those, and trying to create investment and more jobs. We're really excited that next 12 months is, Kevin. I'm glad you framed it that way, because that's going to be really critical for us, and trying to develop Laredo into a much better place in terms of job creation and quality of life. We were talking to our friends at Majestic, and they're a national company, and we were talking about possibilities of what they wanted to do in Laredo, and we were talking about other markets and how we're competing, and we mentioned some smaller markets that we thought were our competition, and they stopped us for a second and said, "You're the number 4, sometimes the number 1 port in the country. Quit worrying about some of these smaller markets. You're competing with LA and Miami and Philadelphia. Expand your horizons a little bit, because that's what Laredo really is, and that's why we're plotting down $1 billion for a development in Laredo." And that really kind of caught my attention and kind of changed my perspective a little bit on how I do my job. I didn't really see it that way until they really kind of enlightened me, Kevin.
So this is outstanding. And we were talking, this is a sales show, and you're talking about contracts about to be signed. How does it feel? Tell us your own personal experience whenever you sign and ink a huge deal for the city of Laredo. What goes through your emotions?
That's funny. First, elation, and then relief, I think, just like anything, right? I mean, hey, you got that out of the way. I think I was, for me, I remember reporting to the city council. Mayor Sines and our city council has been very supportive of these things. But I remember reporting to them about the Mission Produce thing, and I was thinking, $50 million is going to be great. And then they said, "Okay, so what do you have next?" And I was like, hey, can I just celebrate for a sec? Can I bask in this? But no, those are kind of the emotions you go to, and obviously there's challenges and frustrations along the way. But but definitely happy to be working with our team here in Laredo.
Perfect. We're running short on time. We have about 30 seconds left, but I want you to be able to tell our audience and attendees here at the conference today where to go to learn more about the City of Laredo, the economic development, and contact you personally.
Certainly, anybody can find us at the City of Laredo's website. You can just dial City of Laredo. Also, our friends at the Laredo Economic Development Corporation, Laredo EDC, they're very, very good, and we work closely together. Any of us can help you here in Laredo. Any interest you might have on shipping goods back and forth, starting a project, wanting to be here in Texas, let us know. We're here. Thank you, Kevin, for that opportunity.
So thank you, Teclo. Thank you again for joining us today, and good luck, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. I'll save that plate for you.
Yeah, please do. Please do. We'll go to Palenque Grill.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I think Teclo really framed it when we were looking at just how much activity goes through that city, that he's going to be essentially competing with LA, Miami, like these major players.
It is. I think it's about the size of Chattanooga, too. So, I mean, it's probably like 250,000, and kind of the city. We have more of a metro area with Georgia and Alabama. Once you get out of Laredo, it's the desert.
No man's land a little bit.
Yeah, no man's land. It's a long drive from San Antonio down to Laredo, but very much worth it, certainly. But yeah, so touched on a lot of economics.
Yeah,
there
we did, and I mean, it went into deeper than just supply and demand. It's the adequate supply, the right supply for the right demand, and I think that's really one of the biggest takeaways I had here. It's not just, hey, I got this good. I have the correct good. I have the correct solution that you need to help, push us both forward, and not just like, hey, I'm just trying to, unload this deal on you and just kind of keep it moving.
And that's what puts strains on supply chains, right?
Yeah.
Is volume of sales, right? You can oversell your supply chain, and you can undersell your supply chain, and both of those will result in bullwhip effects that will just reverberate all the way down. And we're kind of seeing that with the West Coast, right? The West Coast, the congestion out there. I don't know how many ships are sitting at anchor waiting to get unloaded, but it's this huge demand by the American consumer that is adding the shock to the global supply chain right now.
That's right. And also, before we run out of time here, because we're running short on time, I almost forgot. We have something to give away.
We do. I think it's an Apple TV 4K, right?
We have an Apple TV 4K. We have that ready and geared up here. I'm looking at the latest drawing, and is this a blockchain company, Kevin?
I don't know. I think he works in blockchain, but I don't know if the company is blockchain. It might be a lactose-free blockchain. I'm not sure.
But without further ado, the winner of the Apple TV 4K is Randy Rolfe of the A2 Milk Company. Congratulations, Randy.
Congrats, yes. So you're going to get the Apple TV 4K. And then at the close of the show today, we're going to announce the winner of the big prize of the day, which is a Canon camera.
Yeah, it's not an actual Canon.
It is. Yeah. It's not a revolutionary war Canon. No, I was expecting to find one back here this morning, but it's an actual camera. I can't think of the model because it's a bunch of numbers.
It's like a E. I'm sure the production team behind are just like, it's an EO.
I know,
just
right?
talking about the model.
I'm surprised they're not yelling it in my ear right now. But it's a fantastic camera, top of the line camera that even our production people would use. So that's a huge boost right there. So, but we have great episodes, great sessions, fireside chats coming up this afternoon. Alan Adler is coming up with Richard Simons. And
I have a fireside chat that I'm going to have. I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's right. You do.
Yeah, with Cheaton, with Automative and, Locomative and Locomation. I'm sorry.
Locomation.
Locomation.
Locomation AI.
Locomation AI. Yeah. Sorry, I kept messing up. But I'm really excited about that one because it's looking at just truly the epitome of what this entire conference is, and that's going to be the forward movement of automation and freight and truck transportation. And so talking to him and asking him about, picking his mind, what's the most important aspects of it all, what goes into his mind with his team, just I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm John Godfrey from Pirelli Tires, kind of in the trenches of moving tires and moving tires during the pandemic. Again, Put That Coffee Down is on every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time live, and you can find it on demand at tv.freightwaves.com and wherever you download your podcasts through Put That Coffee Down subscription or Freightcast, where you can get all our great shows and conference materials, Freightonomics, What the Truck, Great Quarter Guys, and much, much more. Long Haul Crime Log, but let's go to the next one.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war, and I've been shutting down the stars.